Well, I've done it. I have finally made my way through the testimony that occurred on day 28 and 29 of the Karen Reed case. Guys, I just got to tell you, it was painful, but I'm going to recap it and try to make it a lot less painful for you guys. So watch the intro and I'll see you on the other side. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Rebecca, your host of Crafting and Crime Daily. This is the second video today since we're covering Karen Reed and we're covering Lori Vallow. So the Lori Vallow video is up. If I remember it, I'll put a link to it up in the eye, or actually it'll be at the end of the video. You can just continue on and just watch it. Anyway, what happened on day 28 and day 29 of the Karen Reed case? Well, as you may recall, Karen is on trial for second-degree murder of John O'Keefe, a Boston police officer. This happened on January 29th of 2022 when they had been out drinking at a couple of establishments. They leave, they go to the house party. She drops him off. She doesn't see him. She finds his body later on in the early morning hours. After he doesn't return home, she goes looking for him. She finds him on the front lawn of the place where she dropped him off. Now, according to the prosecution, that's because when he got out of the car, she backed into him. But in today's testimony, you're going to be rethinking that because we get to hear from the accident reconstruction expert hired by the defense. And I got to tell you, poor jury. I've been sitting on this video since last Friday when it occurred because I just knew it was going to be boring, and I wasn't wrong. But so I'm going to try to kind of succinctly give you what occurred here. So they hired an expert named Dr. Wolf. And initially, the defense didn't hire this guy. This guy, he's the director of a company called ARCA. They're an accident reconstruction company. And they have a lot of government contracts. And with respect to this case, they were initially hired by the federal government. Remember, there was a big federal investigation to this thing first. Well, they were hired by the federal government, this accident reconstruction person, and they were given a lot of material. They were not given any theories of the case. They weren't hired by the defense, not hired by the prosecution, hired by the federal government to do their work. And they did their work not knowing, okay, we think she hit him, not knowing that she dropped him off. Anyway, so, and initially their conclusion was that the damage of the tail light was not consistent with what you were seeing in the actual subject tail light. So, but based on the prosecution, so, at some point the defense hires this guy. And he did testify, I think, at the first trial. But now he's in the defense camp because obviously their opinions were favorable. But they want to do additional testing based on the testing that was done by the prosecution's expert. Remember the blue, I keep wanting to call it the blue man test, the blue test, the blue paint test. Well, this Dr. Wolf did it much more scientifically. So Dr. Wolf, he's got a bachelor's degree in science and engineering, and he's got a PhD in electrical engineering and computer engineering. And he's cute as a button. I do have to just say that. But what a fun date he makes talking about pi and square. And oh, geez, lost me. Anyway, I went out with a guy who was an engineer, and he had physics books all over his house. Oh, man, that relationship didn't last too long. Anyway, so he's also specializes in photogrammetry, which is the science of using photographs to reconstruct an accident. He said, I can use photographs. I don't need to go see the actual vehicle or test the actual vehicle. But one thing this company did do, which is the same as the prosecution, they went out and got an exemplar Lexus. This Lexus company is making out with this case. Now we have 2 exemplars purchased and a whole lot of taillight segments, because I'll talk about that when we get down to the testing. So the first test he does is called I don't know, it's called test A, but he uses a pressurized cannon because he found out that there was a shot glass being involved, because they were trying to figure out, where did all this glass come from? Well, they learned that John O'Keefe was probably carrying a shot glass. So they fired this shot glass from a cannon at 31 miles per hour to hit the taillight. And then they fired one at 37 miles per hour. So their conclusion was, and they're not saying this is what happened in the case, but I think it's kind of a neat idea. John O'Keefe, conceivably, everything is consistent with him. He could have thrown that cocktail glass at the taillight, and you would have seen the damage that you saw to the taillight and the broken glass. But nobody's saying that that's what happened in this case. Anyway, so then he did all these other tests. Okay, that was not test A. What was that called? I don't know. The pressurized cannon tests. So now we're going to get to test A. A, B, C, D, E, and F. Yeah, there are 5 of them, you guys. The jury had to sit through all the logistics of these 5 tests. But rather than taking one exemplar Lexus vehicle and some blue paint on the arm, what this guy did, this company, man, technical, they did 2 tests in the lab, one at 10 miles per hour and one at 17 miles per hour, where they had the taillight housing attached by a 3D thing that they printed on this arm, or on this thing that would just slowly back up at whatever speed they set in the lab. And then they had like a fake arm, and they have had that arm slowly back up. I'm going to show you, and you'll see what happens to the arm when that taillight that's on that big arm hits at 10 miles per hour.
This is a video. Do you want me to go ahead and play the video?
Tell us what we're about to see, and then I'll ask the court's permission.
So you were looking at a camera that is mounted above the entire setup. If you look at the top portion of this video, you will see the taillight. Part of it's covered by the high-speed camera. But what will happen is the linear impactor will fire, and the taillight will be accelerated up to 10 miles per hour, striking the clothed ATD arm.
With the court's permission.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and play the video. Next slide, please. What is this?
So this is also a video, but with the high-speed camera. So it's the high-speed camera that's looking top down at the arm. So you will see when the video plays, you will see the taillight enter from the left and contact the arm. And I will note that this is essentially slow mode, so it's not happening in real time. So you'll see the taillight slowly moving, but it's actually in reality moving at 10 miles per hour.
Understood. Go ahead and play that. Can I ask a question now that that's played? How did you mount the taillight to the accelerator, that linear accelerator?
Right, so we had to get a little bit creative there, because you may have observed this when we had the physical assembly out earlier. The back of that, it's not some nice clean surface that we can just bolt on. So what we had to do is 3D print a bracket that we could bolt onto the linear impactor, and we used a polyurethane expanding foam to be able to marry those two together so that we could then bolt it onto the linear impactor to use it for this test.
Basically nothing. Right? So there no damage to, or minimal damage to the taillight, and no damage to the arm. A couple of things about this testing. First of all, he commented he doesn't know why in prosecution experts blue paint test he needed to purchase all the same identical clothing. Really the only thing you needed was that outside sweatshirt, and he didn't even have that during that. He had a t-shirt on, but John O'Keefe, we know, was wearing this sweatshirt, this full-length sweatshirt, and the prosecution didn't put that sweatshirt. They went out of their way to get the same shoes, the same pants, somebody the same height and weight, the same t-shirt, but they didn't put on the sweatshirt. And that kept bothering me. Well, this guy puts on the sweatshirt. Well, he doesn't put it on the sweatshirt. He puts it on a crash test dummy. Smart thing to do, right? But you can just see in some of this video that I'm going to show you how elaborate these tests are that they're doing. Nothing close to let's slop some blue paint on the arm and see if we can make it fit. This is actual scientific testing, to the point where they're taking that taillight housing and freezing it. And they've got several different ones. So every time they do a test, they did one at 10 miles an hour, they did one at 17 miles per hour, they did one at another at 15, another at 29, another at 24, another at 29. They did all, so that's all different taillight housings, because he wanted to see what the damage would be. And if you had damage on one, you had to replace it out with another. Well, they were all kept in this cooler at the site. And temperature was recorded, and the ambient, or the temperature of that taillight housing when the actual collision occurred, matched what would have been at the scene, which was 17 degrees Celsius. That's pretty elaborate. So, and he kept calling it preconditioning the taillight, because once they got that, it takes a few minutes to get that housing in there on the Lexus. They have to put it in, take it out of the freezer, put it in. Meanwhile, there's a guy with gloves on holding dry ice over this taillight to make sure that the temperature doesn't, warm up while they're doing this testing. So, and he's holding that there until the testing actually begins. He's holding this dry ice on the taillight. So, so test A, I showed you. Test B, they do the same thing, 17 miles an hour now.
What do you note in terms of the deflection on the arm?
The arm, as we saw in the previous one, is accelerated up, so it's moving now at roughly a common velocity with what the impact speed was.
And what did you note about the damage to the taillight?
It was more significant than the 10-mile-an-hour test, which, again, there was very minimal damage to that, where several fragments of that red outer lens fractured, as well as the clear lens.
Okay, next slide. And what is this depicting?
This is extracted frames from the previous video, just showing right at contact, during contact, and post-contact.
Next slide, please.
There was a bit more damage to the taillight at 17 miles an hour, but no damage to the sweatshirt. And then test C, they actually get out of the lab now, and they go outside, and they have an arm hung. You'll see this arm that's hung.
What are we looking at in this overhead view?
This is it's a drone video, so you're going to see the Lexus accelerate from left to right, impacting the hybrid suspended arm in the area where you could see the umbrella.
Can you use your spotlight and orient us? Where are the vehicles and the testing locations?
Yes. So the Lexus is starting here. You will see it accelerate in reverse with the hybrid arm suspended in this area here.
Okay. Is this a video or just a still shot?
This is a drone video.
Let's go ahead and play that. Dr. Wolf, is that in real time or slowed down, sped up?
This is in real time.
Okay. Next video, please. What is this?
This is a camera that was mounted on top of the forklift that was suspending the arm.
Is this a still shot or is it a video?
It's a video.
What is the orientation of that arm as it relates to the vehicle that we'll see?
So it will make contact with the taillight, although I will note in this test, ultimately the contact ended up being more of a clip or a side swipe in this test.
Go ahead. Did you see the impact area?
It's quick.
Right. What did you mean when you said more of a side swipe or a clip?
So I think the next couple of videos will help demonstrate that.
Let's move on to the next one. What are we looking at in this video? Or, I'm sorry, in this photograph?
So this is going to be a high speed or a slow-mo video. You're going to see the Lexus come in from the right and then move across the screen to the left. And you'll see contact occur between the taillight and the arm.
Okay. Can you explain for the jurors using this video what you meant by more of a side swipe or a clip?
Right. So this is where the hand and the wrist are kind of in the area of the quarter panel taillight, and then a portion of the forearm in contact with, I'm sorry, what I previously said, the wrist and the hand in contact with the lift gate portion of the taillight, and then on the forearm is more in contact with the quarter panel taillight.
Okay. Can we move to the next slide? And what is this angle?
This is, yeah, same test, just a different angle with the high-speed cameras in slow motion.
And this is at 15 miles per hour, correct?
15 miles an hour, correct.
Can you explain for the jurors, given the fact that this is suspended, does that have any impact on the ultimate analysis or reconstruction, rather than being attached to an ATT?
Effectively, mass is mass. So whether we have an arm that is suspended or attached, again, it's the arm is on a joint, right? So the arm can accelerate freely of the rest of the body, right? So if anything, even if it is attached to the body, you know, there may actually be some additional force associated with that, just because there could be more mass attached to it.
Understood. Okay, let's go ahead and play this video. Can we go to the next slide, please? What are we looking at in these three photographs?
So you're looking at, on the left, starting from left to right, just at contact, and then just after contact, and then post-contact. So as I mentioned, you can see that in this first one at contact, again, we don't have, the hand isn't and the arm aren't positioned as far out on the previous tests, and the hand is in the area and the wrist of the lift gate taillight, with part of the forearm in contact with the quarter panel taillight. And as you saw in the video, essentially the arm just kind of moves out of the way of the vehicle as it comes by.
Understood. Next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
This is a photograph of the test vehicle subsequent to the test, depicting the, I'll say, lack of damage to the taillights.
Describe what you did see in terms of damage or lack of damage on the taillight.
There was no damage or fracturing to the taillights.
Describe the orientation of the arm in this particular test that you said was more of a side swipe. What was the orientation of the arm to the taillight in terms of how much of the arm touched the taillight? It's probably a clunky question, but I think you understand it.
I don't know if I could break it down into, I think just qualitatively speaking, like I said, it appears to be the hand and the wrist and kind of the lower portion of the forearm, maybe to the mid forearm or so.
So nothing on the upper arm?
Correct.
Making contact?
Correct. Nothing on the upper arm, yes.
Okay. If we can move past this slide and onto the next slide. What is this depicting?
So this is depicting the test taillights of the 15-mile-per-hour impact into the hybrid arm compared to that of the subject taillight.
Was there any notable damage at all on the on the exemplar taillight following test C at 15 miles an hour?
The only thing there may have been was some very slight abrasions maybe to the plastic, but there certainly was no breaking or fracturing of the lens assembly.
And they run into this arm at 15 miles an hour and 29 miles per hour. And in both circumstances, he said the damage to the taillight was not consistent with the taillight damage that occurred in this case. And then he did 2 more tests with an actual crash test dummy that was 200 pounds. They put the same clothing on him, the shoes, the shirt, the sweatshirt, the jeans. And at 24 miles an hour and 29 miles per hour, they said it still was, the damage to that taillight was still inconsistent with the damage you see in this case. And the arm doesn't hit it the way you would think it was. The arm is going to be going at the same mile per hour as that car. Once it hits it, that the arm acceleration speeds up to whatever the vehicle was going. God, I can't even believe I'm saying all this. I sound like a person that knows how to do physics. I don't.
Were you undertook in test D as in Delta?
So this is a 29 mile per hour impact into the suspended hybrid arm.
We move to the next slide. What are we looking at in this series of photographs?
So on the left is my colleague again compressing the taillight while we install the the liftgate taillight to again try to maintain that steady state temperature. Over here on the right is the thermal image of the taillight after the install. So the average temperature of this taillight during the test was approximately 17 degrees Fahrenheit.
Next slide, please. Staying with test D, what is this depicting?
This is a drone video showing a top-down perspective of the test with the Lexus starting on the left-hand part of the screen, accelerating in reverse into the suspended hybrid arm over here at the location of the forklift.
Okay. If we can watch this video, please. Do your next slides show, there you go, the suspended arm. What are we looking at here?
So this is a video camera that was positioned on top of the forklift looking down at the arm. So you'll see the vehicle move from bottom to top as this video plays.
By the way, Dr. Wolf, what are the purple and white lines that we see have predominated? I'm sorry, I was talking over that.
Sorry.
That's okay. What are the purple and white lines that we see?
So those are guidelines to help. I will note that this is kind of like a needle in a haystack. It's very hard to hit this small of a target. So just served as a guideline to reference as we're accelerating rearward into this.
Is this in real time?
This is in real time, yes.
What's the speed that the vehicle is entering the frame at?
29 miles per hour.
Thank you. What happened to the arm in terms of its suspension?
It actually gets ripped off from the mounting location.
Is there a reason you believe physically that arm was ripped off from the suspension tethers?
Well, certainly there was enough force to break the tie lines to the forklift.
Was there a test value of those tie lines?
I think they were rated at 150 pounds.
What does that suggest in terms of the force that was exerted just before we get to the other testing the force that was exerted on the arms to tear off the tie lines?
Well, it indicates that the arm saw at least 150 pounds of force.
Okay. Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this video?
So this is going to be a slow motion video. You'll see the Lexus accelerate in reverse, making contact with the arm. And again, this is the 29 mile per hour impact test.
Okay. Next slide, please. And what is this?
This is a video, a high-speed video, so slow motion of test D at 29 miles per hour into the ATD arm that is suspended. So you'll see the Lexus enter the frame from the right and impact the arm.
Okay. Was this strike more reflective of what you were attempting to replicate?
Yes, this was a more central impact to the arm, yes.
Thank you. Next slide, please. And what is this?
So this is a high-speed or slow-motion video depicting the test D at 29 miles per hour, just a different perspective than the previous video.
Okay. Next slide. And what are we looking at here?
So this is extracted frames from the high-speed video. So starting out left to right, this is roughly at first contact with the majority of the hand, well, the hand, the majority of the forearm in contact with the liftgate taillight, with a portion of the elbow in contact with the quarter panel taillight.
Can I stop you right there on that far left frame? Does that fairly replicate what you were attempting to approximate in terms of the orientation of the arm versus the taillight?
Yes, more of a central impact compared to that first test at 15, yes.
Is that more or less consistent with what you saw in Dr. Welcher's test where he had his arm in that still shot associated with the geometry of the car?
Sustained.
Is this consistent with what you were trying to replicate after your review of Dr. Welcher's report?
Yes.
Sustained. Can I ask it differently?
What were you trying to replicate, or why were you trying to replicate this at the 29 mile an hour test in this particular orientation?
We were trying to see, based upon Dr. Welcher's orientation, what happens to the arm in terms of the acceleration and the damage to the taillight at that configuration at contact.
Okay. Next slide, please. What are we looking at?
So this is a photograph depicting the damage to the liftgate taillight as well as the quarter panel taillight.
And what do you note in terms of that damage?
So on the liftgate taillight, a significant portion of that thick 5 millimeter red outer lens is fractured and broken off. The underlying diffusers are still in place. There was a small crack in, I believe it was the upper diffuser here. The quarter panel taillight had the clear section damaged with the outer lens missing, along with some fragments from the outer portion of the red part of the lens.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this slide?
So this is another photograph depicting the quarter panel taillight. As I indicated, there is portions of the red lens cover missing. The interior diffusers remained largely intact in this test.
Next slide. What is this side-by-side depicting?
This is showing the results of the 29 mile per hour impact test to the test vehicle compared to that of the subject taillight.
Given that orientation of test D, were you able to reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether or not the damage to the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 29 miles per hour?
It was inconsistent.
What's the basis for that opinion, Dr. Wolf?
The results of this test.
And was that testing conducted in accordance with the scientific literature and generally accepted methodologies in the field of accident reconstruction?
Yes.
Is the damage to the right rear taillight consistent with striking John O'Keefe's arm at 29 miles per hour? When I say the right rear taillight, I mean of the subject vehicle.
Sustained as to that.
With regard to your opinion concerning whether the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 29 miles per hour, do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
Next slide, please.
Anyway, I hope those videos helped you a little bit. Bottom line is, if I were a juror, I'd be so impressed with this guy. First of all, he's gorgeous. I know credibility has nothing to do with looks. I get it, but he's really, really intelligent, really smart, seemed to really know what he was saying, and he was following the scientific method where you throw out a hypothesis and you test it, and then you redo your hypothesis and you test it again. Like, this is what he was doing. He didn't do one, here's the blue paint test. So to me as a juror, I'm giving this guy way more credibility than I would have given the prosecution, who just played around with some blue paint. And that was very, like, the last thing that anybody would expect to be scientific. Okay. So this guy was on the stand for almost 2 days between the direct examination and the cross-examination. And the cross-examination, I don't know, this judge does not allow experts to comment on other experts. Like, he's not allowed to sit there and go, well, your Dr. Welcher didn't do this, that, and the other. She's not letting that in. No. All you can do is say what you did in this case, explain what you did to the jury. So now we're on to day 29. The rest of the day 29, they were outside the presence of the jury, putting on their expert in front of the judge, asking questions of their expert in front of the judge. She's a medical examiner that they want to bring in to talk about dog bites and the head injury. To me, it seems a little cumulative at this point. I think, we've gone there. We don't need to hammer that home, but they want to. So it was basically, to see if she was going to be allowed to testify. So she is being allowed, after all that and the arguments and all that, she is being allowed to testify, and she's doing that today on day 31 of the Karen Reed case. Dr. Lapasado. Okay, I'll get that recap for you as soon as I can, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, everybody. Take care.